The Spurs take on the Boston Celtics to close out the first half of the Rodeo Road Trip. And speaking of the Rodeo Road Trip, let's look ahead at what they got in store.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kansas City, San Antonio. Glad to have y'all back. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope y'all are doing great. And subscribe to Locked On Spurs right now over on the YouTube side. Where else? You got the iTunes and Spotify and Ken 5 Plus app. We are everywhere. Subscribe to the Locked On Spurs newsletter. It's in the description below, and you're on YouTube. It's a link there. It says LO Spurs newsletter. Click on that. Completely free. Hits your email inbox every single day. So we appreciate it. What are we talking about today? We're going to look at tonight's game, Spurs-Celtics, to close out the first half of the Rodeo Road Trip. We're also going to look ahead and how the Spurs are going to wind down the long, extended roadie. It was easier to start. It's going to get a lot hairier when they look, once the All-Star break is over. So hopefully, the Spurs will have an above 500 record because minus tonight's game, they're below 500 on the Rodeo Road Trip, beating the lowly Wizards. You know, we'll talk about all that in just a few minutes. And, a preview Boston Spurs. They got a tough out. What a way to close out the Rodeo Road Trip, right? But in a way, I like it. Let's test their mettle. They played Wizards. Wizards are the worst team in the NBA. Half the roster was not even playing. So they better. And I'm glad they did. Can you imagine if they lost that game? I mean, pitchforks and no hockey downtown, that's for sure. I think there might be riots popping up everywhere in San Antonio. They had lost that game. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's going to bring in our guest. He is Matt Guzman with Spurs on Sports Illustrated, rocking the Mizzou cap there, buddy, representing your school.
That's right. I'm here in Missouri for just a few more days until I can get back to Austin. And it's, you mentioned the Rodeo Road Trip. It's kind of cool that they're going to have some quasi-home games, I suppose, to kind of break that up. But I'm looking forward to it.
San Antonio fans are not happy that Austin gets the first shot at Fox in Spurs uniform. That's not. By the way, it's going to be it's not just those two games, everybody. It's kind of an entire week in Austin. Right on pop-up shops to free coffee. Yes, free coffee to a watch party for the All-Star game. Cheering on Castle and Wemby and CP3. So a lot of fun ahead. And if you have not checked out one of the more recent Locked On Spurs podcasts, Spurs executive Brandon James popped on to talk all about it. Go check it out right now. And are you feeling better, Matt? I know you're a little bit under the weather. Are you okay?
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing better. Hopefully it's going to pass here in the next couple of days. I caught the flu, for anyone wondering. Jeff and I are not in the same place right now.
Yes.
So I'm staying as far away as I can until this passes.
Can't get further away, San Antonio, Missouri. So there you go.
Sure.
That'll work. All right. Again, everybody, he is with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Follow him on X at MattGZMAN. He's going to brag about an article that finally came out. Finally, after how long? How long?
It was like a month and a half. It took way too long. But finally, it came out on the day of the game. So it worked out.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, I guess, Matt, if you want to delay it, I understand why it's delayed, but we've been hyping it up for quite some time, but he'll brag about that and why you should go check out his article in just a few minutes. But Matt, let's go and look ahead at the Spurs Rodeo Road Trip. We're going to look at tonight's game, Spurs-Celtics, in just a minute. But if you look at the first half of the Rodeo Road Trip, it was, first of all, below 500 record, not good. But there are a lot of games. You know what? I'm going to say that for Locked On Spurs tomorrow. I can't. I'm about to go off on a tangent. I was like, why'd you lose to this? Why'd you lose 1 point? But when we're looking ahead, Matt, it's going to be a little tougher. Are you a little worried about that second half Rodeo Road Trip based on the first half and how they've been playing?
You know what? I think if we're talking about those besides the Celtics tonight, obviously, if we're talking the 4 games that come after those Austin games, I'm feeling a little bit better about New Orleans and then facing the Pelicans now without Brandon Ingram. But when you get, the tail end to close out, well, not only do you have to play the Celtics, you still have to play the Rockets and the Grizzlies. But I think, there's a good chance that they don't come out with either of those games with a win. And so I think it just makes it more imperative to take care of business in New Orleans. It definitely is a little worrying.
All right, so look ahead the Spurs schedule after the All-Star break and, of course, after tonight's game. We'll get into it in just a few minutes. But they'll resume in Austin, like Matt had been mentioning, against the Suns and against the Pistons. And then they play a pair of games against the Pelicans in New Orleans. So there's that. Then they finish it out with the Rockets and the Grizzlies. Let's start off with the Austin games here, Matt. Phoenix and Pistons. First of all, let's go with the Pistons first. This is not last year's Pistons. This is a Pistons team that's a lot tougher.
Right.
Kate Cunningham is an all-star. He's playing great. This is a team that I hope the Spurs don't sleep on, because we've seen this Spurs team sleep on teams that maybe on paper they should beat. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're talking about the most recent games, now that Fox is in the fold, I think there's going to be, an adjustment period of learning how to play with De'Aaron Fox, and just kind of like it was trying to learn how to play with Victor Wembanyama, let alone pairing the two together. These guys are two shots, one that rimmed out, one that was a second too late, from being 4-1 on this 5-game rodeo road trip so far. And so I think, maybe they should have come out with those victories, but at the end of the day, you're looking at this pairing. This is supposed to be your one punch, two punch for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And so I think you can live with a couple of games that maybe should have fallen the other way when you're first starting out with them. But at the same time, doesn't help the case as far as this season goes for, chasing that play-in tournament, because you definitely would have wanted those wins to get closer to .500.
Yeah. But not only that, again, the Pistons are not the 22 losing skid Pistons last year. They're not. This is the tougher team.
Right.
And they're winning. They might
and they're definitely not going to be able to just take them for granted. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's one thing we've seen the Spurs do this season is kind of bring their level of play down to teams that they shouldn't do. They should play. If they even play their normal game, they should beat. But that kind of leads us to the first game on the back end of the Rodeo Road Trip, and that is the Phoenix Suns. Now that's in the Moody Center as well. It's going to be Kevin Durant night. They're going to be celebrating Kevin Durant and his time at UT. They really did. If you've ever been in the Moody Center, there's like a kind of a small mural of Kevin Durant inside the center. So, but they're really going to pour it on. So, Kevin Durant's going to want to put on a show. He's going to want to put on a show and light up the Spurs. Despite the Suns' kind of weird season, again, this is a game where I'm a little worried about, because if there's a team that could really kind of mop the floor with the Spurs, could be the Phoenix Suns with Booker and Durant, and the list goes on and on. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Phoenix has been such a weird team since they traded for Bradley Beal last season, or maybe that was 2 seasons ago at this point. I don't know when they made that. I think it might have been Beal in the offseason, Durant two trade deadlines ago. The way that team is built, they're an offensive powerhouse when all things are working well. When Devin Booker's hitting his shots, and Kevin Durant's taking over a game, you have Bradley Beal coming in to replace one of those two. It's supposed to be, a defensive nightmare. And despite that, I think their lack of bench depth, their lack of defense has kind of burned them in the playoffs when it really matters. But at the same time, like you mentioned, if it's going to be Kevin Durant day and he's coming back to Austin, he's going to play his best game. And that's never a good sign for a team facing Kevin Durant. But at the same time, if the Spurs don't find their own and get some early stops on defense, it could turn into a blowout if they're not careful, which is definitely reason to worry. But at the same time, you can only hope that awesome crowd, pays their respects to Kevin Durant and then ultimately swings in favor of the Spurs,
Yeah, imagine you had the Austin crowd. You're like, who do I cheer for? Kevin Durant, the Spurs, and then the alumni here, they're probably going to be up there.
That was one of my biggest questions. I kind of wanted to know, I love your thoughts. Do you think there's going to be more Kevin Durant jerseys than Suns jerseys in that building?
I think so. I think there'll probably be a lot of UT Durant jerseys popping up, scattered throughout the Moody Center. So, but I'm expecting that kind of just be a kind of a fight for the Spurs. They can do it. We've seen this team beat teams that are technically better, quote unquote, than them on paper. Hopefully they can do that. I want the Spurs to be spoilers for that game. I want them to be spoilers of that night, spoil Durant's game or his honor that night. Once the pleasantries are over, let's get to business, Spurs. And then they handle business against the Suns at the Moody. All right, so we got the 2 Moody games. How are you looking at those games? A split, 0-2, 2-0. Where's Matt Guzman leaning?
I think I'm personally feeling 2-0. I think that they're going to hammer the Pistons. And I think they'll do enough to kind of keep the Suns at bay. And that's a personal bias. I've never been that high on what that Phoenix Suns team is. It's clear what they can be, but a lot of times they kind of I don't think that they play to the level of their potential.
I got a split 1-1, but I actually got the reverse. I think they get up for that game against the Suns, and I think the Pistons is the one team that's going to really give them some fits. So, and I think that could be an L for the Spurs. But I got them at 1-1 for the Austin games. So far, that's our prediction. Let's go ahead and move on now. Let's see, the next games are the Pelicans games. All right, that's interesting. Now, the Pelicans did trade away Brandon Ingram. Zion is not the Zion that we thought that he would be coming out of college and number 1 pick overall. This is still a team, that could be, kind of a gnat, a bug for the Spurs. But 2 games in New Orleans. What do you think? What are you feeling?
The way that I've seen it so far, it's extremely difficult for any team to beat the same team when you have those 3 games over 2 days at the same building, just back to back. Even last season when the Spurs were completely, just on the wrong end of where they needed to be, the Lakers came to town in December and they took one of those games away. Ironically, it was the game that LeBron played, not the game he missed. And so I think that, even though the Pelicans have struggled quite a lot, you mentioned Zion. He actually is coming. I think he had a 40-point game just the other night. I don't see them taking care of business in both games. I think it's going to be one of those 1-1, whether that's the front half or the back half. But I think I'm kind of feeling a split there.
All right. Yeah, I'm feeling a split there too. You lose Brandon Ingram, a huge piece of their puzzle. And you look at the last 5 games for the Pelicans, their net rating is minus 15.7, good for 30th in the NBA. They're dead last. Their defensive rating is just shocked. You think the Spurs defensive rating, something could be bad. Look at this into this, everybody. 127.1 for the Pelicans in the last 5 games. That's their defensive rating. They're just coughing up, they're just giving up baskets. And then the offensive rating is not that great as well. 25th in the NBA, offensive rating of 111.4 in their last 5 games. So this team feels like they're reeling. As of this recording, they're 15th in the West at 12-41. If the Spurs handled business against the Wizards, and they did, I am projecting a sweep. I got a sweep in New Orleans, man. How about that?
Wow. I'm impressed.
I would for Matt to be like, you're giving them way too much credit.
I mean, it's one of those, like, on paper, they should be able to handle business and, just outplay the Pelicans. But it's something about those, back-to-back games, same day, same teams. Something always tends to go weird in one of the two.
Absolutely. All right, so let's just review before we hit the break. So I have a split in Austin. So, and then I got a sweep in New Orleans. So I got them at 3-1 to start the second half of the Rodeo Trip. Matt, you have them. What again? How'd you have the Austin games? 2-0, right?
I had sweep in Austin and a split in New Orleans.
Yeah. So you basically got it at 3-1 as well. So that's our first prediction right there. 3-1 for Matt and I. We're not done looking ahead at the Rodeo Road Trip because they wrap it up against some very, very tough teams. We're going to look at that in just a few minutes. We're right here with Matt Guzman of Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. We'll be talking about that article in just a few minutes as well. But first, let's talk about Wayfair.
After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the new year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part? The free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate. You'll find everything you need in no time. There's always something for everyone. There's something for every style, every home, no matter your space budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. And, for example, did Wayfair pretty much help you out? Yeah. So if you've used it before, go back and use it again. That delivery is fast, hassle-free. What more than you need? Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
As the new leader of the Decepticons, I command you to subscribe to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Matt Guzman. He's with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Follow him on X at MattGZMAN. And he has an article that's out already. We're going to be talking about that in just a few seconds. Finally, it's out. Finally, I'm glad. I'm glad it's out.
Thank you.
I'm glad. I need the one. Yeah. All right. So we're talking about the Rodeo Road Trip, everybody, and looking ahead, trying to predict, their record and, which teams are going to give them fits or not. So we both say they're going to start the Rodeo Road Trip with 3-1 before wrapping it up against two tough teams, Houston Rockets and the Memphis Grizzlies. Thank you, NBA calendar makers, for having the Spurs start against the Grizzlies and end against the Grizzlies. Oh, and appreciate it. The first game back is against the Thunder. So yay, schedule makers. But let's start off with that Houston game. There's a big gap between the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference, but the Rockets are a lot better. They're ahead of their curve when it comes to their rebuild. Sengun, you have Van Vliet, you got Ime Udoka out there who's just pushing that toughness out there. That's where I get concerned, is the physicality, Matt. That's been the bugaboo for this team. Any team that pushes back, any team that is a lot physical versus the Spurs, we've seen the Spurs struggle. It's not just me saying it. It's not just Matt about to repeat it as well. It's even from Mitch Johnson to Chris Paul. Mitch Johnson has said that, physicality is giving up fits. Chris Paul has said, we need players that have more grit, and you got to get more grit in them. That's what I'm worried about. That's why I think the Spurs are going to start off the last two games of the Rodeo Trip with the loss in Houston. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's been more challenging as of late with Charles Bassey. We still don't really have a timetable on how serious that injury is. But they've kind of been forced to play small, and they were forced to go out and get a big man on the buyout market and Bismack Biyombo. Still, it hasn't done too much. We didn't even really see him play yesterday. Or two nights ago, I say. And so I think it's one of those things where the Spurs need to figure out a way to get more physical, and they have somebody like Victor, right? But he's also not that traditional big man, and he kind of plays, to his strengths as a rim defender, but a floor spacer on offense. And so I think if they're going to come out with one of these, they kind of have to bully their way back. They got to have players that are willing to kind of take those hits and will themselves to a victory, to be honest. But I'm right there with you. I think it's been too much of a struggle. They're 1-2 against the Rockets so far this season. I'm not sure they can go and get another one.
Yeah, look at the Rockets this season. They are fourth in defensive rating at 110.6. So they put the clamps on them. And it's not just Sengun and Van Vliet. It's Dylan Brooks. It's, the Green, Jalen Green. I mean, they got weapons. They got a lot of weapons out there, offensively and defensively. So defensively, they're one of the best in the league. As mentioned, 110.6 defensive rating. But the Spurs could expose them is on the offensive rating. 114.8, good for the middle of the pack of the NBA, 14. What I'm going to need, and I'm probably going to say this again for the Memphis game, I'm going to need another 30-30 game from Victor and Fox. I think that's going to help a lot. I think that's the Achilles heels for the Rockets as far as offensive getting that generated as well. Also, too, the Rockets, they're also middle of the pack. They're not top 10, but they're 11th in turnover percentage, so they tend to turn the ball over as well. Not to say the Spurs are great at that either, but if you're looking for something, for the Spurs to pounce on, that's it. So sure. I think defense, Houston may have that category. We'll see. Spurs do struggle on defense, we've been seeing. But Spurs have, I think, deadlier combo of offensive weapons with Wemby and Fox. I think we're going to need a healthy dose of that versus Houston. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this will be the first time that the Spurs face a team, with Dylan Brooks and Van Vliet and Sengun with De'Aaron Fox. They've gotten a lot quicker from where they were, last time they played them. And so for a team like Houston, which does move fast, you'd like to think that will help them a little bit. But yeah, they're definitely going to need to change something about the way they attack that team, especially on the road. And having been on the road now for a couple more games after those Austin trips. So I think it's going to be huge for them we'll see if they can do it. It's going to be a tough task for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at the last 5 games for the Rockets here, they're kind of struggling a little bit. Their offensive rating has slid even further in the last 5. They're 26th in the NBA at 110.7. But there you have it. But unfortunately, I got a loss in Houston. Matt has a loss in Houston. Let's go to the next game, which is the end of the Rodeo Road Trip, and it's against the Memphis Grizzlies. Do we need to go any further? I mean, what is with this Memphis team that has the Spurs number, Matt? They got their number. They just smoke them every time they play. Before we get into some numbers, what do you think? Like, is it just let's just face it, that Memphis is just the better team?
Absolutely. And I think Memphis is I mean, sitting near the top of the West, like that is a scary, scary team. And it's one of those things where I think entering that first matchup, I was curious myself. Obviously Zach Edey is very great, not taking away from anything that he brings to the floor. But I was kind of thinking, oh, he's clunky. He's not going to fare well against Victor, who is so fluid. But no, he held his own. He got a couple poster dunks on him too in those 2 games that they played at home.
Yeah.
And I mean that is a scary, scary team. And for whatever reason, the Spurs just can't seem to compete. That it might be the one team they've played this season where it's just clear they do not stack up well. So I really had great feelings for this game on the road. But I'd like to think law of averages. It's bound to happen at least once. Maybe they'll get their win. I don't know, but it's a scary team.
As of this recording, Memphis is 35-17, good for second in the NBA. So I'm sorry, the Western Conference. Excuse me. So there you have it. All right, look at some numbers here. Again, they're just a beast of a team. I mean, no matter how you slice it, they just are. Let's look at their overall ratings here. Defensively, defensive rating of 111.8, seventh in the NBA. Offensive rating, it's only just better. Fifth in the NBA at 119.6. So they'll clamp you down on defense and they'll outscore you. That's what that tells me. Overall, you look at anything that you can probably expose this Memphis team, the Spurs can, and it goes back to turnovers. The Memphis Grizzlies are one of the worst turnover teams in the NBA, 26 in the NBA in turnover percentage at 16% of the time they're going to cough that ball up. So Spurs need to capitalize on that transition defense, those second chance opportunities that Memphis gives you, turnover here, turnover there. So hopefully that would work well. Interesting enough, though, defensive rebounding, I'm a little surprised by this. Memphis defensive rebounding percentage, mind you, 21st in the NBA at 74.1. But where they make it up is on the offensive side of things. Offensive rebounding percentage, second in the NBA at 29.9%. The Spurs, there you got it right there. They got to keep this Memphis team off that glass. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, and that's been a struggle all season, is keeping teams off the glass, allowing second chance points and other, new possessions. I think that if the Spurs are going to stand a chance, they're going to have to keep Memphis from giving itself more points. As simple as it sounds, it's definitely not been as easy to do for them this year. But, I'd like to think that if they played them 3 times already, they know how this team operates. They know, where they thrive and things like that. You'd like to think they're going to be a little bit more prepared this time around going into Memphis. Maybe they'll be fired up. Last game of the Rodeo Road Trip, close it out with a win. But, still, that's going to be a very, very difficult task, especially with a team as big and strong as Memphis.
Now you're in Memphis. It's the last game of the road trip. Who knows if the Spurs just physically are there after a long, roadie. And they'll probably be looking forward to coming back home. So there's so many little variables that can get in the way. But unfortunately, I got them with a loss, Matt. What about you?
You know what? I'm going to give them a loss to the Rockets, and I'm actually going to give them a win in Memphis and say it's bound to happen finally. So I'll go with this.
All right. So let's look at our records here. So Matt's going with a split. So he has, check my math here, Matt. You got them finishing the Rodeo Road Trip at 4-2. Is that right? I got them at 3-3. So, yeah. If you go with that, if we go with our predictions and what they've done so far in the first half of the Rodeo Road Trip, they're going to come out about 500-ish, which is pretty much sums up their entire season so far, Matt, if you think about it.
Right.
My thoughts?
Yeah, they've been up and down on that line all season. I think they've finally hit that point where they're a few games below it, to where it's not every game is going to put them back at, one under, one above. So they've got some ground to make up, but I think that has perfectly summed up their season, which ironically is a big increase from last year with only 22 wins. So the fact that they're even in this position says a lot.
Yay, Spurs. You broke through 22 wins last year and now above that. Way to go. The bar was set low, but you still did it anyway, guys. Improvements. All right. There you have it. Our look ahead at the Spurs Rodeo Road Trip, at least the second half, and what we think. But we did leave one team off our talk, and that's the Boston Celtics. Why? Because they get the Celtics tonight. We're going to be discussing that game, previewing, what the Spurs got to do, some numbers. We'll look at all that good stuff in just a few seconds with Matt Guzman with Spurs on Sports Illustrated. You want to follow him on X at Matt GZMAN. So, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at Spurs Celtics. But first, let's talk about Open Phone.
Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get a complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of all your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge.
What up, Doc? This is Bugs Bunny, and you are listening to my best friend, Jeff Garcia, host of Locked On Spurs.
We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Matt Guzman. His Jordan flu game here on Locked On Spurs. Just like Jordan came off that, got us suited up and played. Matt is doing that here. That's why you got to follow him on X at Matt GZMAN. Send him your well wishes so you feel better. Shake off whatever is bothering him, and so he can be 100% for the Austin games that are just right around the corner. All right, we're looking now at Spurs and Celtics. Yes, the Spurs will close out the first half of the Rodeo Trip against a tough out, the Boston Celtics, the defending champs. Yay, Spurs. So, Matt, in a way, I'm glad they got a W versus Washington. I know it was against the worst team. But if anything, it built confidence for Wemby and Box. You saw them 61 points combined. But even then, Matt, you look at that Washington game, there's still moments where I was pulling my hair out. Like, how do you blow, what was it, an 18-point lead? How do you do that? How do you let the Washington stay in the game for at least 3.5-ish quarters and then, put them away? That was a Washington team that should have put away early, and they did, but they couldn't sustain it. A couple of players, even Fox talked about it after the game. He said one of the things that they're talking about in the locker room is what do we do with leads? How do we maintain that? They're not playing the Wizards tonight. Obviously, they're playing the Celtics. I fear if they get down in this game, it might be lights out for them for the rest of the night. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still, like I said, I think we mentioned earlier, there's still that adjustment period of learning to play with De'Aaron and playing with Victor together. But they had a few games now, and I think they're beginning to understand how each other operates. So they have a chance to go in Boston and hold their own. But at the same time, as you mentioned, with how much they've struggled to hold leads or to close out games, if they get themselves into a bidding war at the end of the game against the Celtics, especially on the road, that's not one that's going to fall in their favor. And that Boston team knows how to win. It's it's fresh off of a title a couple of years ago, and this is just, or it was last year, I guess. This is just a team that the Spurs cannot afford to give early leads to, or because that's not a team that's going to choke that lead. They definitely got to stay out front of it from the start.
Yeah, Boston 38-16, good for second in the Eastern Conference. Let's go look at some numbers or some things that the Spurs got to watch out for, and you too, Spurs fans. So you need to defend that 3 line, Matt. They're going to need to defend that 3 line. Why? Well, because the Celtics have 7 straight games of making more 3-pointers than their opponent. 7 straight. So they're lining it up from the 3 line. What else? Oh, I find this very interesting too. They also have a 6-game streak of recording more blocks than their opponent. So they're knocking down the 3. They're getting blocks. What else? They're getting to the free throw line. They've gone to the free throw line more than their opponent in the last 5 games. This team is just clicking. It really is, Matt. This is the all hands on deck game for the Spurs. Not only just for Wemby and Fox, but for Vassell, the second unit, Keldon. They gotta bring their A game.
Yeah, so that's a team that, like you mentioned, I'm surprised to hear some of the blocks and the 3-pointers, especially that. I mean, the Spurs know, I think going into this game, they know what they're up against. They know how strong that team is and everything. And so, it's going to come down to Victor being able to find his groove on offense. I know he struggled a couple of games as of late, but I think, like you mentioned, that win against Washington was big for that duo of Victor and Fox because they kind of, for the first time, both flourished, to their potential. Any game that Victor scores 30 is a huge success for the Spurs, let alone another player who scores 30. That's what they've been looking for. If they can get another one of those games, they'll find themselves right there with him against the Celtics all game. But, with as clean and polished as the Boston Celtics are, they can't afford any dumb mistakes. They're going to have to keep, get offensive rebounds themselves. They're going to have to not turn the ball over. Chris Paul's probably going to have to get 9 or 10 assists. It's going to take a lot, but, they have the tools, and it's just a matter of whether or not they'll be able to execute when it matters.
They definitely do. Steph Castle's been playing great of late. We talked about this in yesterday's Locked On Spurs, but we're almost there to say that he's clinched the Rookie of the Year award. I think he's almost there. We'll from another month or two. So I think he's playing great. Obviously, Victor and Fox had one game where it worked. We'll see if it duplicates tonight versus Boston. Everybody, keep an eye on the scoreboard. At home, Boston is nearly undefeated. They're 13-3 in their gym when they're winning at halftime. So keep an eye on that. If you see Boston up at halftime, then you might be all she wrote for the Spurs. Although, another kind of another story I'm looking forward to seeing is Wemby and Porzingis. Remember, Porzingis was kind of the Wemby before Wemby came to the NBA. Porzingis was considered, what I call him a unicorn for a reason. That was his nickname when he came in. Wemby's the alien. So I'm loving to see that. What Porzingis was projected to be, before he got riddled with injuries. For those that remember, in his New York days, he was a monster. He was a beast. I'm loving to see that as well. But another, matchup I'm looking forward to seeing is Castle and Jaylen Brown. They're going to put him on it, or they put Castle on Jason Tatum. I think no matter how you do it, I want to see how he lives up to that, that matchup. So, yeah, the Spurs got a test. What are you feeling, Matt? Win in Boston or nah?
Yeah, I don't think so. You mentioned that Wemby Porzingis matchup. I think it was last year when the Celtics came to Frost Bank. We asked him about it, and he said he looked up to him as a kid. Porzingis, you mentioned those days in New York when he was really flexing, his capabilities. He's kind of coming back into that now that he's fit into that system in Boston. He's not their number one scorer, not even their number 2 option. And so, that's kind of what makes him so dangerous is he's not expected to do all these things. He just goes out there and gives what he can. You also got Derek White over there. I know that he's a player I'd love to watch for forever. So, but yeah, I really am excited to see what Castle does and who they put him on, how he fares against that team. But no, I don't know if they're going to be able to push it off on the road.
I can see White kind of giving the rookie some lessons. I can see that happening.
Absolutely.
I can definitely see that happening. But either way, look, Spurs, if you're going to go down swinging. It'd be great to end the first half of the Rodeo Trip with a win, but it's going to be a tough out. But hopefully, y'all make me and Matt wrong, because that'd be awesome to talk about on a Locked On Spurs tomorrow. Like, we're going to recap the game. So we'll talk about that. But he is Matt Guzman of Spurs on Sports Illustrated. Matt, finally, the article is out. Tell us what you have out now regarding Spurs Julian Champagnie.
Yeah, so I kind of went into the process thinking it was going to be, how has Julian turned into the big piece that he's been for the Spurs? And I know he's struggled as of late, but, definitely still a strong role player for them this year. And I kind of turned into, walking through Julian Champagnie's journey to this point from the eyes of his brother, kind of getting a lot of the intel from his twin, Justin, and they played last night. I'm sure you saw the clip where Justin hit a 3-pointer over Julian. He got right up his face, and both of those guys were looking forward to that matchup. And Justin is pretty cocky, to say the least. That's one thing I learned, is that Justin is cocky, loves to egg on his brother. So it was cool to see them play. But yeah, it's a profile on Julian and kind of how he got to this point with the Spurs and being a twin in the NBA.
do you know who's older or no? They're
Yeah, so Justin is 7 minutes older.
oh,
Just 7. And so I said, I was like, if you give him a hard time for that, he was like, always, of course.
always of course, yeah, his brothers, yeah, you gotta have the leg up. 7 minutes is better than, obviously, yeah, you gotta take that. But yeah, the article's out right now. We've been talking about that for quite some time here at Locked On Spurs. Whenever Matt comes on, it's finally out, everybody. You want to go to Matt's profile right now, Matt GZMAN. There you'll see the link, or just a link to his website, Spurs on Sports Illustrated. You can go check it out. Either way, that's probably the best bet. Just go there, Matt GZ, man. Check it out. Give him your feedback. Let him know what you think about the article. He's been working hard on it. Trust me, I know. He's been working hard on it a lot. So give him a little bit of shine there, everybody. Matt, we always appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and having the Jordan flu game here on Locked On Spurs coming in, feeling under the weather. Get better, buddy. Get better.
Yes, that's the goal. I appreciate you having me on. Always great to be here.
Yeah, and I'll see you very soon. I'll see you in Austin.
Absolutely.
A few more days, so we'll hang out there in the Moody Center as the Spurs take on the Pistons and the Suns. All right, we thank y'all for making Locked On Spurs your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever we get podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Ken's Find Plus app. You know where to go. Also, serve Locked On Spurs newsletter. It's in the description below on YouTube. It says LO Spurs newsletter. Click on that link. Good to go. Sign up completely free. So for Matt Guzman, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.